Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Thursday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky, Darvin Ham is test driving many people for the fifth starter role. Who's going to get the gig? That's next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, no matter how or where you get your podcasts. It's always going to be free. It is never going to be behind a paywall. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go to see the show, hang out with 21,000 or so subscribers to the channel. Everyone getting excited about the direction that this season could take. Andy, training camp well underway. First preseason game coming this weekend. I don't think Saturday's game is going to provide necessarily definitive insight into who is going to be the fifth starter to go along with Reaves and Russell in the backcourt, LeBron and AD in the front court. But tops on the list of people's interests, I would say, is figuring out who that might be when the real games begin. And thus far, we just don't know. We just don't know.
The first practice, which took place on Tuesday, it appears that Jared Vanderbilt got the nod as that starting small forward. Then during Thursday's practice, it was Taurean Prince. I would not be surprised at all if they practice on Thursday and or Friday, Rui ends up getting a look. There's always a chance that it could be Christian Wood with Anthony Davis pushed to the 4, LeBron pushed to the 3. That is the one option that I hope ultimately is not what Darvin decides on, unless it just looks so much better in practices or games than either one of us thinks it could, specifically because of the effect it would have on LeBron as a defensive small forward. But either way, Darvin has talked about wanting to mix and match, tinker with different looks. And that is one of the great things when you're a coach with a roster with a lot of legitimate NBA players, a lot of versatility. You get to tinker in the lab in a way that, frankly, coaches relish. They love this stuff.
It is better. Look, options can be a challenge. Options can be hard for people. You don't know.
I mean, last year, the best option for starting small forward for the first half of the season for the Lakers was nobody.
Yes.
Really, there was no good choice.
we're just going to roll with 4 guys. We'll run the picket fence. It'll be great. And options can be tough because somebody is going to lose out and somebody is going to not get the answer that they want. And you can, the problem with options is, you can pick the wrong one. Maybe you start with Taurean Prince and it turns out Rui was the best option there, or Vanderbilt was the best option. You start with Vanderbilt and you turn around 20 games later and you know what? It was Taurean Prince, and it should have, and it was inevitably, whether it's people like us, whether it's, fans or whoever it might be, somebody's
guys on the team.
Screamingly obvious that Darvin should have known exactly what to do from the beginning, and he didn't. And we've wasted 20 games because Darvin's scam just doesn't understand what to do. By the way, I saw our first Darvin scam reference of the year on the YouTube chat board. Please keep them coming. Remember, a lot of things rhyme with ham, so you really can go. You can get quite creative here,
and pretty much none of them flattering.
No. Many adjectives to choose from, or nouns, or whatever you want to go with. But the problem, obviously, ultimately, this is a good problem to have because when you only have one choice, if that choice turns out to be a bad one, well, you're kind of stuck with it. And so the Lakers have tremendous optionality. I like, and we'll get to ideas of who we think this could ultimately be. We're going to go through all of these things, and I think it's going to run all the way up until not the very beginning of the season. I suspect they'll have a starting lineup before then, but I don't think Darvin is going to commit to having that fifth starter named until he feels like it's really necessary. And in the second, third, fourth day of training camp, it is not necessary.
No, a couple things I find interesting with Taurean Prince. First of all, he's he's a legitimate option there that makes a lot of sense. And as we've talked about, he's kind of replacing both Malik Beasley offensively as a shooter and Troy Brown defensively in terms of the different looks he can provide. He's a bigger body than Troy. You know, Troy was more of a guy you would look to guard 2s and 3s. Taurean can guard 2s, but I think he's been more successful guarding 3s and 4s. He's
3s and 4s, absolutely.
He's certainly that type of body, but he's kind of replacing both of those guys as one player, and frankly, I think a better player than either one of them. But what I also think is interesting about Taurean is just he's been kind of overlooked in terms of either the guys that were retained or the new guys brought in. You know, there was a lot of attention on Gabe Vincent, in part because he got the biggest contract of any of the new guys. And also he's replacing the one core guy from this team, Dennis Schroeder, who left that, you know, really matters. And Schroeder had a good season last year. So there's going to be a lot of attention on Gabe Vincent that way, or, you know, Christian Wood, who is skill-wise an absolute steal at his price, but there's the questions that have accompanied Christian Wood, and his free agency lasted like 2.5 months. And the Lakers had been linked to him the entire time. So there had been a lot of focus that way.
Calling every day, he said.
But Darvin and Rob Pelinka calling Christian Wood every day as well. They should.
He'll keep calling me. He'll keep calling me.
You know what, man? Good on them. That's how you make something like this happen. But with Taurean, he's somebody that provides a dimension the Lakers did not have last season in terms of somebody at that size with a proven outside shooting ability. And, you know, I don't think he's a lockdown defender, but he's solid and he's smart and he's somebody that can guard, you know, a couple different positions. They didn't really have anybody like that last year at all. And I think they're really going to benefit for having one.
Yeah. And it's from a starting standpoint, you know, when you sort of think about player X versus player Y, what do you get? And these are all good options. The Lakers will have a good starting lineup if they start Prince. They'll have a good starting lineup if they start Vanderbilt. They'll have a good starting lineup if they start Rui. There are trickle-down effects and different impacts. And I know, you know, one of the things that we've talked about with Vanderbilt is starting Vanderbilt is the easiest avenue towards getting him playing time. Whereas Taurean Prince and Rui have clearer paths, whether they start or come off the bench. But with Prince, it's like Prince versus Vanderbilt. It's, do you want the steadier outside shooting? Because no question, Taurean Prince, who pledged to shoot over 40% on media day.
Yes.
So, you know,
he said
book it.
He said 100% that's going to happen.
I'm here for it. I'm all for it. He has clearly not seen what happens to shooters when they put on the uniform.
Okay,
but
funny
I
you
love
say
that he's willing to say he's going to overcome it.
Funny you say that, Brian, because yes, the Lakers have had this curse that nobody can quite figure out what's sparking it, where guys show up with established shooting credentials and apparently forget how to shoot. I don't know if it's something going on in the building, if it's the Broadway lighting that they do where things are dimmer in Staples compared to other places. But I got curious, when is the last time anybody on the Lakers that was there for a full season shot 40% or better from 3 on 4 or more attempts, which I consider decent enough volume? Like if you take 2.5 per game, that's not really that substantial.
Okay, wait. Don't tell me. Let me think about it while you tell me about something else.
Locked On Lakers is brought to you by Bird Dogs, the makers of shorts and pants that feature the future of comfort built-in underwear. It's stitched inside the pants or shorts, almost like a layer of boxer brief that is at one with the clothing. They call it Comfort Kingdom, and you can rule this land in your Bird Dogs. You can look better, feel better wearing Bird Dogs. The stretchy fabrics makes my legs, your legs, everyone's legs look great. They are comfier than other shorts and pants because they're not made from the typically stiff, restricting cotton in most leg wear that makes your legs feel confined, like they're in a cage. You want to free them. Bird Dogs features cloud knit fabric also that Looks like khaki, but it stretches. It's liberating. So again, indulge your legs. They're versatile. You can wear the same pants or shorts on a golf course, a work meeting, or on a date, even in the same day, because they are designed not to stink. You will not become an outcast in your bird dog. So go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA or enter the promo code LockedOnNBA at the checkout for a free Bird Dogs water bottle with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA for a free water bottle with your checkout. You will not want to take your bird dogs off. They are that comfortable, we promise you.
All right, Andy, you asked me a trivia question. It was the last Lakers player to shoot over 40% from three on volume of 4 or more per game.
Who spent an entire season with the Lakers. Like D'Angelo did it last year, but he was only there.
Right.
Yeah, so doesn't count.
Russell Westbrook.
Solid guess, but no.
Okay, then I'm out of ideas.
The 2021 season, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope shot, I believe it was 41% on 4 or better, the 2020-2021. Before that, you got to go back to Nick Young in the 2016-2017 season. And before that, here's one you would have never come up with, Jody Meeks in the 2013-2014 season.
Look, there's a lot about the stats and the humans that played on those teams
but also
just don't really remember.
Too, poor Jody, he was a really good guy and actually worked his ass off while he was a Laker, improved a lot and got himself paid. Jody was there for 2 seasons that could only be described as quite the bleep show. Yeah, so you sort of forget about the positive things that happen.
It just
though. I like Jody.
It doesn't happen often where you get guys who, but so like for Prince to be able to come in and shoot 40% like that, but that's, to bring it back to the lineup question, that's sort of what you're choosing. Do you want the shooting of Taurean Prince, spread the floor, for LeBron, AD, a guy who does not need the ball? It's not, he's not a ball dominant guy, but somebody you have to respect the jumper, and will force teams to guard him. Or do you want maybe the little bit higher degree of activity, particularly on the defensive side, and more importantly, the rebounding that Jared Vanderbilt provides? I mean, I think that's
Taurean Prince typically doesn't.
Prince not a great rebounder. So like you're choosing. Even if Vanderbilt is a better defender, Prince is a good enough defender. So like you're choosing really there between perimeter shooting and rebounding, I think is the primary.
Well, I disagree with that a little bit. I think you're actually choosing between perimeter shooting and defense for forwards versus perimeter defense, because that's the thing that Jared Vanderbilt specifically can do that Prince doesn't do as well, and the rebounding.
Right.
Like,
okay, that's fair. That's fair.
That defensive distinction, I think, matters.
Sure, but what I really meant to say was it's not like you're choosing between an obviously negative defender and an obviously positive one. That's really what I was getting at. And like Rui, you have that shot creation ability that you don't have with Prince or with Vanderbilt. In addition to strong defensive pairings, especially with LeBron, really seem to thrive playing next to LeBron. The plus minus of those two as a pairing was really startling last year, once Rui was acquired. But the flip side of that is that skill set better used coming off the bench, where he, where you would have more time with maybe just LeBron, so there's just a lot of different things to kind of match with, and it does help. It's nice to see Rui on Monday, for example. I think we mentioned this for Tuesday's show, saying, I don't care if I start, I care about how many minutes I play, meaning he wants to play as many as he can, and I care about finishing games. And so, you already have a guy who's saying, I don't know, start Vanderbilt, it's fine, I don't care.
And he's he's the guy with the most clout of the three in terms of who we've been talking about.
So, I mean, what do you think is the right? I mean, I think ultimately they would like to settle on a starting lineup that they can roll out for those first 10 or 15 games and see how it works, as opposed to mixing and matching, which is an option. I just feel like the downstream impacts of who you start are such that if you want to get a settled rotation and really understand how the combinations work beyond the starters, it will be helpful to have a consistent starting lineup for 15 games.
I think unless Darvin suspects that there could be enough reasons that for matchup purposes, you would have that fifth starter fluid, like you're going to be just presented with enough different opponents where you'd want to go with a different look that you'd keep that spot fluid. I would suspect that it would make more sense to try to have it locked down. I would think maybe after a few preseason games, just because if something starts emerging, then you want to try, because I think the Lakers are actually going to play guys during the preseason.
Right, maybe not starting on Saturday, but players will.
Oh, I actually think starting on Saturday they're going.
I don't, but I'm not like full rotation minutes. Guys will appear in the games, but
right. I think I don't think they're going to play heavy minutes, but I think everybody's going to play.
They do have 6. It's worth noting oftentimes teams will have 4 or 5 preseason games. Lakers have 6. So they have a sort of extra game to work with here, that which gives them some options.
Speaking of shooting, there have been a lot of attention paid heading into this season and then during media day on Anthony Davis's shooting. Austin Reaves on a recent podcast talked up the work that he had seen from AD in the offseason and the results. I guess when they'd all been in the gym together, but I think also during the mini camp that LeBron put together in San Diego. It's a weird thing with AD, like the idea of trying to get him back on track as a shooter. And that was something I know we heard a lot about last season, as both a media narrative and also something we'd hear a lot from fans. But what I found interesting about this, and I'll be honest, it surprised me a little bit just because you hear something so much, you start kind of accepting it as the reality. If you look at AD's actual jump shooting numbers, whether you're talking about like 10 to 16 feet, 16 to 23 feet, like what would be considered, mid post, high,
right.
High post, whatever, other than 3-point shooting, which remains bad. And I'm not convinced that Anthony Davis as a 3-point shooter is ever really going to be a thing, because it never really has been a thing. Like his best season ever, he's been like 33, 34%. Like that's the best. He's 30% on his career. But last season, his mid-range numbers were some of the best, not just of his career, but as a Laker. Like they're actually some of the best ones he's put up, like including, by the way, the championship regular season. The playoffs, AD was on another level that, frankly, I'm not sure he can replicate, because that just might be
insane. Right.
That just might be his peak. But for the regular season, where I know everybody thought AD was cooking in terms of his jumper, his numbers they were actually better last season than that regular season, which I just found that interesting.
And it's particularly from that 10 to 16 feet. He was at 32%, I think, a couple of years ago, around there, 31.5 when I looked it up. And at 40 from 10 to 16. Last season, his numbers, he was well over 50% from 3 to 10. Last season, he was under 50% from 3 to 10 the season before. But the 3-point, it's really, the 3-point shooting thing is I think what a lot of people to some degree are looking at, just because it had become this idea of like Anthony Davis, he's shown the signs of being able to shoot the 3 and all that stuff. And it has really disappeared. 2 seasons ago, he was catastrophically bad. 21, 22, he was under 20% from 3. Last year, not a whole lot better. He was 26%. But what Davis has actually kind of done over the last 3 seasons is basically phase that shot out of his game. And I think that's fine. Anthony Davis does not need to be a 3-point shooter, Andy, to be successful as somebody who, when he plays away from the rim. So let's stick on this for a second, because it is important to, I think, talk about what it is that you mean when you say Anthony Davis as a shooter. Because if it just means 3-point shooting, maybe we got a problem. But if it doesn't, it opens up all sorts of options. So let's discuss that. And Mike Malone, Michael Malone, both of them next.
Locked on Lakers is brought to you by FanDuel, and you can celebrate this NFL season with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, new customers can bet just $5 and you get $200 back in bonus bets guaranteed. You can use those bonus bets on spreads, on player props, over-unders, futures, all sorts of different fun stuff. And all customers who bet, again, just $5, you get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. And this is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is really easy to use. It's a lot of fun. All these different options right at your fingertips. But of course, there are also NBA props that you can bet on. Opening night, the Lakers are, of this recording, 5.5 dogs on the road against the Denver Nuggets and chatty Mike Malone.
Haters.
LeBron is a 50-1 odds, 50-1 bet to win MVP. Anthony Davis, 30-1 for MVP. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Kick off the NFL season with an offer you don't want to miss. FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL.
So it's important, Andy, that AD be able to face up and shoot effectively. I think we can agree that is a big component of his game. Doesn't have to be, the mid-range artist of all time. He doesn't have to be DeMar DeRozan. But he needs to be effective from that range, because he's so good when he puts the ball on the floor and all that. I don't have to explain it to you. That doesn't mean three-point shooting, though. I don't care if Anthony Davis takes 1 3-pointer a game or no 3-pointers a game for the rest of his Lakers career. I'm more or less okay with that. The Lakers have plenty of other shooters who can take threes instead of Davis, and Davis can space the floor in ways that don't involve 3-point shooting.
Like, do you think it was more of a thing when the Lakers had less 3-point shooting options, so you were looking to Anthony Davis to potentially become one of them?
I don't think it was necessarily me. I think it was just.
I don't mean you. I just mean the
I think
conversation.
There was the belief, because a couple of seasons ago he had going back and looking at the numbers.
His last season with the Pelicans, he was at 34%.
34 with the Pelicans in 2017-18. 33 with the Pelicans the year following. First year with the Lakers, 33. And this was after a jump from 30%, a couple seasons before that. So there was this sort of idea that this outside shot was coming around. And given where the game has gone and what it means to have bigs who can shoot threes, and Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic and all that, the idea that Anthony Davis could become a 35, 36, 37. Imagine if you had that plus all this other stuff to go along with it. That is an unstoppable offensive player that, not only can you not guard him because you have to do so many crazy things to even try, everyone else around you becomes better. And think how good LeBron is going to be playing with a 7-footer who can shoot 36% from 3, 37% from 3, and do all the other stuff.
Well,
and so I feel like there was this drive to turn him into that guy, and it just hasn't worked. The critical 3 against Denver in the playoffs notwithstanding. That one worked. That's the only 3-pointer Anthony Davis ever needed to hit.
No, I mean, if you're going to hit one, that was a good one. Choose.
It was also damn near his last one.
I do think there is something to the idea of the Lakers in the past, whether it felt that way heading into the season or whether it just emerged that way. You might be looking for that from Anthony Davis, not even just the idea of making him this, prototype Voltron basketball player that just can quite literally do everything. And what do you do about that when the guy happens to be 7 foot? There was also the idea of, can anybody on this team hit a damn 3? Somebody needs to do it. Frankly, LeBron takes too many of them. As much as I get at times why he's taking some of those, because he's tired and they are less taxing shots. They're not always that effective of shots or ideal of shots from LeBron, but some of the other guys that you were hoping would make those shots around those two weren't getting them to fall. So again, you sort of look at AD as possibly one of them. I also think, though, that it's kind of fallen under the radar how the other elements, though, of his jumper, and maybe this is an extension of what we've talked about before, how AD's offense in general gets hyper scrutinized, I think, because so much of it is viewed through the prism of we want to take the load off LeBron. Therefore, AD needs to be an absolute monster at all times. And anything that seems slightly imperfect starts making you feel like LeBron has to do that much more heavy lifting. Again, when I looked up those numbers, I was surprised by them. And you and I watched every single game they played last year. But just when you hear about something enough, you know, it affects your memory of it. It affects your perception of it, even as it's happening right in front of you.
I think the biggest difference is he was a little bit better from 16 to 3-point range in the championship season, for example. But he was comparable. He was better from 3 to 10 last year than the championship season. And he was exactly the same functionally from 10 to 16. And so it's just the idea of being, I think, just to be able to move further away. And, you know, the memories of some of those clutch shots, but what's funny about it to me is it's the threat. It's the credible threat that needs to be there. And it's funny, like Kobe was never a particularly good 3-point shooter.
No, he'd go on heaters at times.
Exactly. And he had the reputation, I think well earned, of such a killer, of a guy who would just kill you at that critical. He might miss 10 3-pointers, but that 11th is going to be the one that is with 18 seconds left, where you left him open and dared him to take the shot, and he made it because he's Kobe freaking Bryant. And whether the stats bore that out or not is irrelevant. It was the threat of that made people spend much more time guarding him and defending him in those spaces when you were much better off letting him launch 33s over the course of a game.
But the thing is,
Anthony Davis, you need defenses to believe that the 17-footer, that the 19-footer, whatever it is a shot that they must come out and defend. And so the percentages, in some degrees, the percentages are less important than the aesthetics and the confidence. Like, he's got to project like this ball's going in at 45%, even if it's going in at 39.
Yeah, I mean, the results do matter, like in the sense
that, but you understand what I mean.
No, I was going to say, beyond the fact that there's a tangible reason they matter, like AD is always going to have gravity no matter where he's taking a shot, because it is impossible as a defender to wrap your head around the idea of just let Anthony Davis take that shot. In the same way with Kobe, like, it didn't matter that he was never a consistently good 3-point shooter. It's Kobe. Like, even Kobe post Achilles would be putting up some of these shots where you're just like, all sincere respect to one of the all-time legends, you don't actually need to be guarding him there. But again, it's Kobe. Of course you're going to. I mean,
intellectually, it just doesn't make sense otherwise.
No, I feel in a lot of ways about this with Rui, for all the talk about can he sustained or come close to sustaining the 3-point shooting that he had in the playoffs. Obviously, I think it's important that it's higher than, say, 30%, which he had been during the regular season with the Lakers. To me, it's about those mid-range numbers with Rui. If those shots from Rui in the mid-range remain as good, particularly as they were in the playoffs, but a lot even in the regular season, that's where a guy like Rui will have gravity, even if it's not all the way to the 3-point line. Like, remember, it was Memphis. They began in the beginning daring Rui to shoot. Rui took the dare, and they're like, okay, I guess we got to go defend this guy because he's killing us.
But the point you're making about how gravity doesn't have to always extend and always mean 3-pointers is a really critical one.
Yeah. Real quick, because we were talking about the back and forth between, I guess, the Lakers and the Nuggets, Lakers fans, Nuggets fans. Mike Malone was apparently asked about this Wednesday during practice, about the talking and the whatever. And he said, quote, "Yeah, I can't speak for anybody in LA. I can speak for 17 players on our team, now 18 players in our group. If they're worried about us, that's on them. This is a new season, a new challenge, and it was a hell of a series against them. I know it was a 4-0 sweep, but all of those games seemed like they went down to the wire. As I said after that game 4, we have tremendous respect for that team. We have tremendous respect for Darvin Ham as a coach and the job that he did, but I don't listen to any of that stuff. I don't know what they're saying, and if we're on their minds, I guess that's on them." That is an amazing job by Mike Malone of what I think is sincere, genuine respect for the Lakers, offering it, and also what I know to be total gaslighting of the situation, because the reason this has become a thing, Coach Malone, is because you wouldn't shut the hell up about the Lakers after the series ended, much less like during it, the amount of disrespect he thought your team was getting. And as you and I discussed yesterday, Brian, we're cool with all this. We don't have any issue with Mike Malone saying any of this, whatever. It's like, if this is what it takes to keep his team sharp, do it. All of this stuff is theater, but it is hilarious. It's very funny.
It is. And, you know, I just would like to remind people, please do not expect your athletes, your coaches, your anything to do things and say things directed towards their team that are tethered in reality. It's not how this works.
Nope.
It is a different set of interests that Malone has now versus last season. He's going to say things that do not make sense relative to other things that have come out of his mouth. And the Lakers are going to say things and do things that do not make sense relative to what they were doing last year. And none of it is going to be tethered in any way to reality. So I am here for all of it. I respect Malone's sudden ignorance over where all of this is coming from. I don't know what you're talking about. You know, that's a great team over there.
We closed that chapter the minute that series ended. Honestly, we don't even pay attention to what the media says about us in the first place.
Right, I don't know what you're talking about. But anyway, it's fun, and again, we don't have to wait very long for these games to start. We don't have to wait very long for the preseason to start, Andy. Only one more show before the Lakers actually take the floor in some meaningful pretend basketball over the weekend. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go to see the show, hang out with upwards of 21,000 subscribers. Send us questions, leave us comments. We'll be using it all as we get ready for the season. We'll see everybody on Friday.